Hey everybody, I think this is recording. Good. I just didn't hear the words because I think I had my sound turned down. I just wanted to take a second to, or a few minutes, to make sure you guys actually get the logistics of the biopsychology paper, the final paper for the class, and the extra credit, because I want to make sure that it's crystal clear, when we are on ground in class, I obviously go over this around the time right after or so, maybe right before your third exam, which starts Monday, and you have till Friday to take it. Um, I just wanted to make sure that you understood what was going on. So, for those of you that had me for Psych 1, it's basically the same idea. Um, I also don't want you to look at that thing that says 1.5 pages and make you think twice that it looks like 11.5 pages, because it's not. So let me go ahead and explain exactly what I want from the paper and from the extra credit paper, should you choose to do it. And then I will um, feel better myself, because then hopefully, as long as you watch this video or listen to it, whatever you call it, then you'll have a good idea of what I want for this. So for the biopsychology paper, again, it's worth 20 points. It is the last assignment. It'll be due June 1st, which is um, obviously the last Monday of the semester. If we were actually still in school, because of the way the holidays are structured, the first Monday of finals week is actually the last day of classes for those Monday, Wednesday classes. So June 1st would technically be the day that you would turn in all papers. So your biopsych and your extra credit paper would both be due um, on that day if we were in class. So I'll make it due that night by midnight. And even though technically finals week starts um, the Tuesday, the 2nd, I will open up your final exam on Monday, the 1st, the same day that these papers are due. And you have, I think, until Sunday night. You'd have until Friday or Sunday night, we'll see, to take it. I haven't uploaded the exam yet, but I just have to change the one that was for the online class, obviously. This paper is worth a total of 20 points. What I would like you to do is take something that you learned in class, some lesson, some information maybe that I've taught you, and I'd like you to apply it to something in the real world. So how does biopsych, how do we deal with biopsych in the real world? What does biopsych look like in the real world? It's just the biological side of psychology. So I'm hoping it's not too difficult to task. Um, and a lot of times learning about cells and neurons and what a certain part of the brain does is interesting, yes, especially to me, because I'm the neuro nerd. Maybe a bit fun sometimes, but we don't always get a chance to apply it to the real world. I try as much as I can um, to do so, to give you real world examples of things. Um, but I happen to think of a lot of examples I give and a lot of lessons I teach have applications in the real world. Obviously, we've seen what happens with drug addiction and people that go through that. We've seen head trauma and injuries. We've seen people that have been diagnosed, and even though we haven't gone over that chapter yet, it's the last one, we're going to definitely talk about it a lot: depression and schizophrenia and anxiety disorders and things like that. Um, so, what I want is a could be a personal experience, which is a story that involves you and links your personal experience to one of the topics that we cover in class. And you know what? Doesn't even have to be the topic we cover in class. Intelligence, sexuality, um, development, right? Some of those other chapters that we don't touch upon can be used in this case, right? So the only thing that I ask is you give me a background of the story or incident or thing, experience that you wanted to pick. Um, and so give me a background of what happened that day, or, in particular about that situation. The story does not have to be about something that happened to you. It could be something that happened to a family or friend that you witnessed personally. I don't want to hear a paper about, my cousin told me that his uncle's former roommate was blah, 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 right? If you wanted to, I said you could think of a movie and apply it to something we covered in class. One of the things that you would be doing for extra credit is a movie paper. So if you're planning to do that, you know, I'd rather you talk about a personal experience. If you think of a movie, just think of a situation that happened in the movie as if it was, you know, something you witnessed firsthand. That's if you're really stuck. I would really like you to pick a personal experience of some sort, unless you just can't think of one. But there's a lot of examples in the real world, right? So think about nature and nurture and looking at the way people act in certain situations. Think about something that happens and somebody gets angry, and think about the anger, how it's part of the limbic system with the amygdala. So you can talk about parts of the brain. Genetics, where you may have noticed something in a parent-child combination, right? There's plenty of things in the real world, and especially right now during a pandemic, we see all of this hoarding behavior. We see all of these people saying that their rights got taken away. When people are isolated like this, it is it affects their mental health greatly, and some of that is obviously circumstantial, but a lot of it, you know, we think of behavior, and you can basically relate it to something biological. Think about testosterone levels for anger. Think about with hoarding behavior. In the last chapter, we don't go over hoarding, but it's a type of like an OCD type of reaction, and you can always look that up. You don't have to get something from the book, which brings me to my next point. What's expected for the format of the paper? Well, this says 1.5 to 2 pages double spaced. It does not say 11.5. Somebody one time told me, what, 11.5 to 2 pages? I'm like, no, 1.5. Maybe I should change that to 1.5 in the future. I want the paper double spaced so you don't really have to write a lot. 2 pages max, really? I mean, if you go a little over 2 pages, it's okay. I'm not worried about it. I want it in 12-point font, which is Times New Roman. Now, back in the old days of Microsoft Word, that was the default setting. We're not really worrying about something called APA style, which is where psychology papers are written. The only thing I keep in APA style for this is double space 12-point Times New Roman. So please use that font. Don't just give me the default setting, or you may lose a point or two. Proper grammar and spelling. If you have spell check, you do have spell check on your computers or devices, please don't be afraid to use it. And I want a reference from the book or from a website. So when we use what we call citations in APA style, and again, this is other than double spacing and 12-point, that's all I'm asking for. You can see it's in bold, so it's very important. This is 3 points of your paper. Let's just say, for example, that you were talking about somebody that you know, a family member or a friend that had schizophrenia, just hypothetically. The first thing you do is tell me the background of the incident or story or experience that you're talking about. And all of a sudden, my uncle started talking to himself and thinking that somebody was talking to him when nobody was there, right? Blah, 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 blah. That was the end of the incident. Then you would say, my uncle was diagnosed with schizophrenia, period. Schizophrenia is, and I want you to tell me about the phenomenon or disorder or whatever it is, right? So you would use a reference from the book. If you were to say, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is defined as blah, blah, blah. These are the symptoms. Maybe, you know, this percentage of people have it, whatever it is, right? And then if you found that in the book, let's say it was in the, you know, behavioral disorders chapter, so somewhere around the 350 pages, at the end of that sentence or two that you talked about what schizophrenia was that you got from the book, you would just put, before you put a period at the end of the sentence, you would just put Garrett, who is the author, comma, and whatever the page number was. So you would say, my uncle was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia affects 1% of the population and has 3 different clusters of symptoms: positive symptoms, hallucinations and delusions, comma, negative symptoms, antisocial type behavior and depressive behavior, isolation, comma, and cognitive deficits, which include problems with thinking and learning and remembering, period. If you said that, or before you hit the period, you would put Garrett, comma, page 351, period, right? Or if it's not in the book, and maybe it's something a little more, or you just couldn't find it in the book, or you just were, it's easier for you because you're writing on a computer to look it up. If there is a website that you got your information from, you type in schizophrenia symptoms and diagnoses and stuff like that on Google, it takes you to a website. Now, obviously, it's not going to be google.com/psychology. That was just an example. But if you got the information instead of from the book, if you got it from a website, perfectly fine. At the end, instead of giving me in parentheses the author, comma, page number, literally just copy and paste the URL. Copy and paste from up above here. Just click, hit Control C, whatever, then go to that part of the paper and hit Control V. You know, however you do it. Just copy and paste the full URL from the top onto that. If you got it from the book, just give me Garrett, comma, page number. If you decided to do it off of a website, just do it like this. Just literally copy and paste the web address. As it says right here, for example, copy and paste the web address. So really, in summation, I would just like you to tell me about something you've learned in class or how you can apply something to the real world. And since we're all internet savvy people, perhaps using Google to look something up in order to help your paper out would be a good idea. The only thing that we don't do and we don't like in APA style in psychology is don't quote. Don't directly quote an article. If you were to do that, you'd have to put quotations, and please just paraphrase, or you know, if you have a website, you know, you can stay very close to the way that it's written. Maybe change a couple words to make it fit. Or if you do directly quote, just use quotation marks and make sure. And so cite the reference. Again, either the page number of where you found it in the textbook, or just copy and paste the URL. Normally, when an article or paper is cited after it's quoted, you put the author's name and year of the paper next to the quote. So if I were to say something like, quote, "The left brain is the side of the brain that deals with language, blah, blah, blah," and then I put Kobe, comma, 2006. So it was a paper written by Kobe in 2006. In this case, if you're just getting information off a website, you would simply put the web address next to the quote in parentheses. So for a score of 20 points, and this is all you need to do, clearly describe the event. So give me a summary of exactly what happened and how it applies to biopsych. Then you fully explain how the event is related to some theory or empirical finding on the topic, which means, again, let's just say that your uncle had a mental episode, and it was clearly what we would call a positive symptom. It was psychosis that comes from schizophrenia, which is one of the positive symptoms. So you would say, my uncle was diagnosed with schizophrenia. This would be right after describing the actual event or experience. My uncle was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And then you would go for at least a paragraph or so, you know, a few sentences to talk about schizophrenia and how it affects him. So you might say, you know, schizophrenia, the positive symptoms of schizophrenia are due to excess dopamine in the basal ganglia or striatum. And then you would say that causes, you know, people to see or hear or imagine things. And that is what happened to my uncle. So you're tying it into what was going on. Accurately use any relevant technical terms. You know, you might want to, for this story, you might want to talk about, you know, if you did anything, how you felt about it, right? And just, you know, to round out the paper. But really, I just want to hear about the experience and how it ties in to biopsych and using the right terms. With drug addiction, you can make your own sort of inferences, right? So clearly describe the relevant experience and event and how it applies to biopsych. Fully explain the actual thing, schizophrenia, drug addiction, nature, nurture, whatever it is that you want to write about. Accurately use any relevant technical terms, right? We talk about clusters of symptoms in schizophrenia. And follow any standard conventions for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. So that's it for the main paper. Hopefully that is giving you a better understanding, if you even looked at it in the first place. I did mention that you could use sort of a movie or TV show topic, but I wanted to kind of stay away from movie just because the extra credit paper here is about reviewing a film. So I don't want you to review two films necessarily. Um, so I wanted to give you guys a chance to earn even more extra credit because one of the opportunities you had in being on ground in class is that you would have been able to potentially come and help my research methods Psych 92 class in running their experiments by being a participant and getting a few points of extra credit. But that opportunity is no longer available, obviously. So in addition to that extra credit survey that some of you guys took, I'm giving you a chance for up to 10 more points of extra credit for writing a paper. This paper will also be due the last day of class, same day as the term paper, which is the night of June 1st. So you still have a few weeks. I wanted to give you a chance to earn a few extra points, so I'm offering extra credit. It is another paper, but this time specifically your mission is to review a film that has something to do with biological psychology or neuroscience. And again, all of psychology can be sort of, any psychological problem can be traced back to the biological side, right? In Psych 1, we talk about the biopsychosocial scale, and this is the biological side of things. So for film analysis, pick a film that involves psychology directly, either as a main plot or a big reveal at the end. You know, no spoilers here. And analyze what's going on with the character, summarize how it was handled, etc., etc. Examples of films include A Beautiful Mind, 50 First Dates, Split, The Soloist. Some of the newer Split, it was a big one for when it came out, and still a lot of my students write about Split. The newest one that I've gotten a lot of papers on is the Joker, because there's a myriad of things wrong with Joker. One of the things that people concentrate on is something that they'd never heard of before, and something we don't really teach in psychology, we don't even teach it in like abnormal psych, but it's called the pseudo-Bulber effect. And if you really want to use that as your thing, then feel free, I just gave it to you. So for a score of 10 points, there are 5 sections. Each one is basically like 2 points each. But I want to make sure, just like with the main paper, the first paragraph or two is going to be a summary of the movie overall. So you talk about what happens. Again, if you're using Joker, you would talk about Joaquin Phoenix's character and basically what he went through, and sort of just give me a nice overview of the entire movie in a couple paragraphs. You don't need to get into little tiny details. I mean, if you want to, I'm not going to stop you. But again, it's also going to be this 1.5 to 2 pages assignment. If you go a little over, again, you're not going to get graded down. It's all extra credit. So summary of the movie, and just like in your regular biopsychology paper, a summary of the problem at hand. Is it drug addiction? Is it abuse? Is it domestic violence abuse? Is it nature nurture? Whatever it is it schizophrenia? There's a lot of those, right? As I put, Beautiful Mind, schizophrenia, Soloist, schizophrenia, 50 First Dates obviously is anterograde amnesia, as we are about to go over in the learning and memory chapter. So summary of the movie, summary of the problem. Again, you don't have to put any citations or quotes, but it would be in a very similar way to the first paper, where if it's, The Soloist, you would talk about how Nathaniel Ayers, the main character, is suffering from schizophrenia, and Steve Lopez is trying to save him or help him. Some of the symptoms you see, disorganized thoughts, blah, 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 hearing voices, right? That's what I mean. Again, this means explain the biopsych term or disorder, etc. Use any relevant terms. The third paragraph or third portion, explain if there was any intervention or treatment for the characters. Did the character go to therapy? In the movie Split, we know that Wendell Crumb, or whatever his name was, that had all the personalities, was seeing a therapist. Whether or not it did any good, we don't know. If I don't think the movie ever revealed if he had any medication for his disorder of dissociative identity, or what used to be called multiple personalities. But you can talk about how he went and saw a therapist. So was there any intervention, treatment? Was there medication? Were there family members that were helping? Obviously, in The Soloist, Nathaniel really had no family in Los Angeles, but um, Steve in The Soloist, if you were Nathaniel, or if you were Steve Lopez, if you were a family member, or you could even hypothetically insert yourself into the movie. The movie's Girl Interrupted, and Angelina Jolie's character was in an institution, so obviously she was getting as much help as she could. And if I was the doctor in there, if I was you know, a friend of hers, I would make sure that she was getting all the right treatment in her facility and that she didn't try to escape or whatever it was. Explain what you would have done either as the person afflicted, a family member, a friend of the person trying to help, or yourself just in the movie. You can do that as well. And the last thing is my favorite part. It goes along with your discussion now in oh, sorry. I guess I was the online classes discussion now. I realize that you don't have this discussion. Um, but because of this paper, you don't have this discussion. Otherwise, I would have put it up for us. But explain if it does a good job portraying the illness in your opinion, or if it makes the person slash illness look better slash worse slash different than you think it should. So what does that mean? Let me break that down real quick. It means that some movies are better than others in actually capturing what the real world symptoms and what people go through um, in real life. A lot of times, there's no obligation for the writers to actually get it right, and sometimes they're going for the Oscar or they're going for comedy purposes, right, or things like that. So with Split, is that really what a person with multiple personalities is going to be like? It's pretty over exaggerated for the drama of the movie. In the movie The Soloist about schizophrenia, in my opinion, and you guys will see the video clips of this, Jamie Foxx does probably the best version of a character with schizophrenia that I've ever seen in my life. And it sticks to the true story as best it can. So absolutely, I think that The Soloist does an amazing job of actually getting symptoms and the mannerisms and everything right. Um, in a movie like Jim Carrey, uh, there's a Jim Carrey movie called Me, Myself, and Irene, which again, slapstick comedy, and it's about him having split personalities. Is that what it looks like in the real world? Absolutely not, right? And the reason that I bring this part up, and it's so important to me, is because people that don't take psychology classes, right? Even though movies are fake, people don't know that the way that characters are portrayed, the way that depression looks or schizophrenia or something like that looks, bullying, right, is not necessarily what it's like in the real world. But if you have nothing else to reference, if you don't take a psychology class to know that, that's basically your frame of reference. When I was a kid, I thought that multiple personalities, DID now, and schizophrenia were exactly the same thing because that's how it looked in the movies. And in fact, there was a movie called What About Bob that came out in 1991, I think, with Bill Murray, and it was a comedy um, about a guy with mental problems, and his psychiatrist goes on vacation. So that's one you could do. What About Bob? His psychiatrist goes on vacation. He feels lost without him, so he goes and finds his psychiatrist on vacation, and hilarity ensues. But there's one part where he is reciting a poem, and he says, "Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I." And it's funny, and it's Bill Murray, of course. And for me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's hilarious!" And oh, I guess that schizophrenia and multiple personalities. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I. They must be the same thing. Obviously, they are clearly not, right? But from that movie, it did a really bad job of portraying that. So I ask you guys for the last portion, which is my favorite part, does it do a good job of portraying the illness or situation or affliction, or does it make the person or illness look better, worse, or different than you think it should? That's all I'm asking. That's up to 10 points, extra credit. and now you hopefully have a better idea of what these final papers entail. Next week is your third exam, then we just have 2 chapters left to get through to the end. And thank you, thank you, thank you once again for sticking it out with me. It's not been the easiest for everybody. I know this, but thank you for sticking it out. Until next time, guys, I will talk to you soon.